The universe, as it turns out, doesn't give a damn about your feelings. It's Allison. The Galactic Confederation learned approximately 14 standard hours after their surgical precision strike on what intelligence reports had identified as a military training compound in the northern hemisphere of that troublesome blue planet called Earth. Oh, how spectacularly wrong intelligence reports can be when compiled by species who consider antennae wiggling an acceptable form of body language analysis. One might think that after achieving faster-than-light travel, someone would have invented faster-than-stupid thinking. But alas, technological advancement and common sense rarely achieve synchronous orbit. Earth had been a thorn in the Confederation, side since first contact 8 years prior. The humans bipedal short-lived and with an inexplicable affinity for keeping other species as pets had refused to bow to galactic conventions. They declined membership, rejected trade regulations, and worst of all, they laughed at the Grand Arbiter's ceremonial headgear during the New Cycle Summit. The fact that it resembled what humans called a toilet plunger was entirely irrelevant. The Confederation had tolerated their insolence primarily because Earth occupied a rather unremarkable corner of the galaxy, the cosmic equivalent of that weird apartment at the end of the hall that everyone avoids because the occupant might try to engage you in conversation about conspiracy theories. Their primitives, Ambassador Zixtol, had declared during the emergency session that authorized the strike. His 3 mouth parts clicked in what passed for condescension among the Nulvorian diplomatic corps. They've barely left their own solar system. Their most advanced weapons rely on chemical propellants. One demonstration of our power, and they'll fall in line like all the others. The Supreme Commander of the Confederation Fleet, a gelatinous mass of neural tissue floating in a nutrient bath, who had conquered 17 star systems, without losing a single ship, gurgled in agreement. Target their military infrastructure, minimal casualties, maximum psychological impact. And that's how the fleet's most advanced tactical cruiser, the Inevitable Righteousness, came to deploy a precision kinetic impactor on what they believed was a military installation in a region humans called Montana. The Confederation's xenoanthropologists had identified the facility as a clear military training ground. It housed young humans being conditioned for combat, separated from their birth units to maximize loyalty to the state. The compound contained minimal defense systems evidence of the human's technological inferiority and would serve as the perfect example. The kinetic strike hit at 3:47 a.m. local time. Silent, devastating, precise. The main building collapsed instantly. Secondary structures followed. The Confederation observers nodded their various appendages in satisfaction as they watched the feed surgical elegant a textbook demonstration of power. Then they waited for the inevitable diplomatic channel to open for the humans to beg for terms. Instead, they got silence for 12 hours. Then, as monitoring stations across the galaxy suddenly picked up a massive surge in human communications, the Confederation's diplomatic AI began spitting out translations faster than anyone could process them. Words like children and orphanage appeared with alarming frequency. It was Grand Strategist Cavorn who first understood as his 6 eyes widened in what might be the closest approximation of horror his species could express. "We've made a mistake," he whispered. Impossible Ambassador Zixtol clicked. Our intelligence was clear. It was a youth military training facility. It was an orphanage, corrected Cavani, his voice dropping, to a register that made several junior officers' exoskeletons vibrate uncomfortably, a place where human offspring without parental units are housed and cared for, not soldiers' children. The room fell into the kind of silence that usually only happens in the vacuum of space, except with more imminent dread. Surely they'll understand it was a misinterpretation of cultural norms, offered a Gervidian analyst, her voice unnaturally high. We issued standard warnings. We followed protocols. The Supreme Commanders. Nutrient bath bubbled ominously. How many casualties? Cav's manipulator appendage shook slightly as he transferred the data. 234 juvenile humans, 17 adult caretakers. Children repeated the commander, the translation matrix struggling to convey the gravity. In its synthesized voice, "We killed their young." The Confederation representatives looked at each other, those who had eyes to look with. They had conquered worlds. They had ended civilizations that refused to comply with galactic law. They had even erased a sentient fungal collective that had threatened to destabilize the quantum fabric of reality itself. But they had never note ons in 10. US years of unified galactic governance targeted the young of any species. It was the diplomatic attaché, a relatively junior Tavian who had actually visited Earth twice, who finally broke the horrified silence. "You don't understand what you've done," he said, his feathers flattening against his body in distress. "Humans don't think like us. They're different. Different how?" demanded Zixtol. "They protect their young above all else. Not just their own offspring, any young of their species, and they don't compartmentalize conflict the way we do." The Supreme Commander Translation Unit seemed to struggle with the concept. "Explain." "For us, war is political. It's strategic. It's about resources and territory and influence." The Turavian's voice grew quieter. With each word, "For humans, when you threaten their young, war becomes personal, and they don't have our restraint." Across the vast network of Confederation monitoring stations, analysts were now reporting an unprecedented surge in human military communications. Ships were being recalled, reserves, activated production facilities that had been manufacturing consumer goods were rapidly retooling, and on screens throughout the chamber, the first official human response appeared. Humanity does not recognize the concept of limited warfare against those who target children. Your action has been categorized as an extinction-level offense. You have 14 standard hours to remove all Confederation assets from human space. After that time, no quarter will be given. No, terms will be accepted. May, whatever gods you believe in, have mercy on you, because we will not. The message was signed simply, Humanity. Cav's exoskeleton made an uncomfortable creaking sound as he shifted. Surely this is diplomatic posturing. No species would declare total war over a tactical error. The Turavian attaché was already backing toward the exit. "You still don't understand. For 10,000 years, we fought wars according to rules, conventions, limits." His voice cracked slightly. "Humans invented a concept called total war millennia ago. The complete mobilization of all resources, the targeting of civilian infrastructure, the absence of limitations." He paused at the doorway. "And that was just what they did to each other. We've just killed their children, their orphaned children, the most vulnerable members of their society, the ones they feel the strongest collective obligation to protect." For the first time in living memory, genuine fear rippled through the Confederation command chamber. "They can't possibly stand against us," Zixtol clicked, but his mouth parts were trembling. "We have 10,000 worlds they have won." "That's what the ancient Hagloyans thought, too," said the Turanian softly. "No one's heard from them in 3,000 years, and they only threatened a human mining colony." As if to punctuate his point, the chamber's emergency lighting suddenly flashed red. The planetary defense grid surrounding the Confederation capital had just detected unauthorized ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, thousands of them, all of human design. The universe, as mentioned earlier, doesn't give a damn about your feelings, but humans, they give so many damns about their children that they just might burn the universe down to make a point. And the lesson was about to begin. If there were an intergalactic award for most spectacular misreading of an enemy, the Galactic Confederation would have just won it by such a margin that they'd need to invent new mathematics to calculate their score. Unfortunately for them, there would be no shiny trophy, just the rapidly approaching fleet of very, very angry humans. At the heart of the Confederation's blunder lay a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology that their most advanced AI systems had somehow missed. They're countless. Xenopsychologists, with their impressive arrays of degrees and tentacles, had collectively failed to grasp a concept so basic that human toddlers understood it. Don't hurt kids. I still don't understand the disproportionate response. Complained high. Admiral Corvex, as emergency klaxons wailed throughout the Confederation's Central Command Center. The Admiral's crystalline form refracted the emergency lighting in what would have been quite beautiful under different circumstances. Say circumstances. Not involving imminent annihilation. We've issued a formal apology, we've offered reparations, we've even volunteered to build them a new orphanage. Grand Strategist Cav, whose many eyes hadn't blinked in approximately 2 hours, stared at the tactical display showing the rapidly advancing human fleet, Admiral. Imagine someone burned down your crystalline growth chamber and killed all your facets in formation. That's completely different, huffed Corvex, several of his edges dulling in indignation. Facets are my direct genetic descendants. These were random human offspring with no biological connection to most of the humans now threatening us, the Teravian attaché, who had been frantically gathering his personal effects into a secure container. Paused long enough to give what humans would recognize as an eye roll. And that, Admiral, is exactly why you're about to have a very bad day. Humans don't make that distinction. To them all they're younger, equally precious. Perhaps the unrelated on. To the guilty. The Supreme Commander's nutrient bath rippled as it found its voice. You cannot possibly intend to dismantle a political structure that has maintained peace across this galaxy for 10,000 years over a single regrettable incident. Watch. Us, replied the human, still smiling that terrible smile. You see, that's the thing about humans that your reports and analyses never quite captured. We're not just aggressive or resilient or adaptable. We're vindictive. When you hurt what we love, we don't just defeat you. We erase you. We salt the earth. We make examples that last millennia. The human checked a small device on their wrist. You have 30 minutes to compile the list of those responsible. After that, we stop asking nicely. As suddenly as they had appeared, the human was gone, leaving behind only Asmal communication device on the central table. In the stunned silence that followed, the Teravian attaché finally slipped out the door. No one tried to stop him. They were too busy watching. The main tactical display, where the full human fleet was now visible. Thousands upon thousands of ships of all sizes, from tiny fighters to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Confederation Navy and painted on the side of every single one. The image of a human child's toy, a small stuffed bear. I don't understand. The symbolism, whispered Zixel. The AI's voice when it answered seemed subdued. It appears to be, teddy bear, a comfort object given to human children, particularly those who have lost their parents. The Supreme Commander stared at the endless fleet advancing toward them, each ship bearing that innocent symbol transformed into something terrifying. 30 minutes, it burbled quietly. Begin compiling the list as various officials rushed. To comply, Grand Strategist Cav remained staring at the tactical display. We thought we understood them. He murmured to no one. In particular, we cataloged their behaviors, their technologies, their cultural artifacts. We thought we knew their strengths and weaknesses. He shook his head slowly, but we never understood what they become when you take something. They love the countdown on the communication device continued. Its remorseless advance towards zero. Each tick bringing the Confederation closer to learning exactly what total war meant to a species that had spent most of its history practicing it on itself, and was now, for the first time, united in turning that terrible skill outward. The universe, as previously noted, doesn't give a damn about your feelings. But it was becoming increasingly clear that humans gave far too many damns about certain things. And the consequences of ignoring that fact were about to reshape galactic history. History books, should there be anyone left to write them, after all, this would probably describe humanity's response as disproportionate humans themselves would. Use a different term. Appropriate funny how perspective works when you're the species that just had its orphanage turned into a smoking crater. The 30-inut deadline came and went. The Confederation, in its infinite bureaucratic wisdom, had managed to produce a list of exactly 12 individuals they deemed responsible for the orphanage targeting error. The human diplomatic representative, who had reappeared precisely as the countdown reached 0, took one look at the list and laughed. Not the pleasant laugh of someone enjoying a good joke, but the hollow laugh of someone who'd expected disappointment and received it right on schedule 12. The human asked, running a finger down the data pad. Fascinating. You've managed to find exactly 12 individuals responsible in an organization spanning 10 EO0 worlds. They handed the pad back. Try again. We'll wait. Except, of course, they didn't wait. As the Confederation leadership stammered excuses about chains of command and distributed responsibility, the first wave of human ships reached the defense perimeter around the Confederation capital. What happened next would later be described by surviving witnesses as artistic demolition. The Confederation's orbital defense grid, the pride of their military engineering, constructed over centuries, designed to withstand attacks from entire fleets, lasted approximately 7 minutes against the human assault. Not because humans had overwhelmingly superior technology, but because they attacked in ways the system's designers had never anticipated. They didn't target the grid's power sources or control centers. They didn't attempt to overwhelm its computational systems. Instead, they simply used its own defensive protocols against it. 500 small unmanned craft, little more than engines and transponders, approached the grid from different vectors, each broadcasting distress signals identical to those used by Confederation civilian ships. Defense protocol required the grid to divert resources to validate these signals before firing. While the system was busy doing exactly that, precision strikes from human stealth vessels, which apparently weren't a theoretical impossibility after all, targeted the sensors doing the validation. One by one, blind spots appeared in the grid. Through those gaps poured human special forces in ships so small they barely registered as more than debris. Not to destroy the grid that was already happening quite efficiently, but to secure something far more valuable. The vast data archives containing the complete records of the Confederation's 10,000-year history. You're stealing our cultural heritage, protested Ambassador Ziegel as the human representative showed them real-time footage of the archive infiltration. Our art, our literature, our scientific achievements, these belong to all sentient species. Yes, agreed the human pleasantly. They do, which is why we're preserving them before we dismantle your political structure. Unlike some, we don't target cultural artifacts. The barb landed like a physical blow. Meanwhile, across Confederation space, human diplomatic vessels appeared simultaneously in the orbits of 317 worlds. Every planet that had voting representatives on the Confederation Council, each broadcast the same message. Your government authorized an attack that killed our children. Your government now faces extinction for this crime. You have a choice: stand with them and share their fate, or declare independence and neutrality in the coming conflict. It was arguably the most elegant application of psychological warfare in recorded history. Not a single human weapon was fired at any of these worlds. Not a single threat was made against their populations. Just a simple choice presented without emotion, leaving each world to consider the images now flooding every communication channel. Images of a destroyed orphanage, of small broken bodies pulled from rubble, of a unified human fleet larger than anyone had believed possible. One by one, worlds began to break away from the Confederation. First dozens, then hundreds. This is illegal. Secession raged the Grand Arbiter from his emergency bunker. They cannot simply, they're not doing anything interrupted, the human representative. We merely provided information. Your member worlds are making their own decisions. In the command center, The Supreme Commander watched in horror as the tactical display showed the Confederation literally dissolving around them. How it burbled. How did you organize this so quickly? How did you build a fleet this size without our knowledge? The humans smiled that same terrible smile. We didn't have to build anything new. Every ship you see out there already existed. They were just distributed, serving different nations, different corporations, different purposes. When we received news of the Orphanage, something unprecedented happened. We agreed the human gestured to the display. That fleet isn't the result of some lengthy military buildup. It's what happens when humans stop fighting each other and turn their attention outward. Every nation, every corporation, every private military contractor and independent operator, all with one purpose, but your species is famously fractious, protested cavorn. Your entire history is defined by internal conflict. Yes, said the human, and now you. No why. The rest of the galaxy should be profoundly grateful for that fact. When we fight ourselves, everyone else gets to live in peace. As if to punctuate this statement, the main Confederation defense fleet finally mobilized and moving to engage. The human armada encountered something new. Not weapons, not ships, but a wave of data transmitted directly into their command systems. The data consisted of personal messages, hundreds of thousands of them, each from an individual human to the Confederation forces. They weren't threats or demands. They were explanations, stories. Each message contained the name, image, and biography of a child who had died in the orphanage, attack, their hopes, their dreams, their favorite foods and games and subjects in school. The small details that made each one a person, not a statistic. And at the end of each message, the same question. Are you prepared to die for those who killed this child? The Confederation fleet facing both overwhelming human military power and this unprecedented psychological assault did the unthinkable. Ship by ship, they stood down. Commanders refused orders to engage crews mutinied rather than fire on the human vessels. As the last elements of organized resistance crumbled, the human representatives evaded. The Confederation leadership bunker with the air of someone examining a particularly unsuccessful Escience experiment. We would like that complete list now. Not 12 sacrificial offerings, but everyone involved from planning to execution. The human checked. Their timepiece. You have 1 hour. After that, we start conducting our own investigation, and we're considerably less surgical in our methods. The Grand Arbiter found his voice at last. And then after you've had your revenge, what becomes of galactic civilization? The human considered this something better. We hope. Something that understands. Certain lines cannot be crossed, even by accidenta. Pause. We are not monsters, despite what you currently think. We don't want to rule your worlds or destroy your peoples. We just want justice for our children and a guarantee it never happens again. The list was compiled within the hour. It contained 823 names. Not one of them would escape. The thing about consequences is that they have this annoying habit of arriving whether you've prepared for them or not. Kinda like in-laws or tax audits, except with more existential dread and fewer awkward dinner conversations. Precisely one standard galactic week after the orphanage was reduced to rubble, the Galactic Confederation, that proud 10,000-year-old institution, ceased to exist. Not metaphorically, not in some abstract political sense, it literally ceased to exist. The human fleet, having secured control of all major Confederation facilities, systematically dismantled the entire governmental apparatus. Archives were copied, then transferred to a newly established Galactic Heritage Foundation, run by a coalition of former member worlds' administrative systems, were archived, then erased. Command centers were evacuated, then converted to memorial museums. The 823 individuals deemed responsible faced human justice. Not execution, as many had feared, but something many found worse. They were sentenced to rebuild. Each one was assigned to the reconstruction efforts on Earth, rebuilding not just the orphanage, but the surrounding community, working alongside the humans who had lost children in the attack. Poetic Justice remarked, the human representative watching former Confederation officials laying foundations under the watchful eyes of grief-stricken humans. They'll spend the rest of their lives creating something to replace what they destroyed. The Supreme Commander, now simply a private citizen of its species, couldn't comprehend the sentence. This isn't vengeance. It burbled in confusion. Where is the retribution? Oh, that's already happened, replied the human. We destroyed everything you built. Your legacy, your achievement, your place in history. It's gone. The Confederation will be remembered only as the government that bombed an orphanage and paid the price. That's the vengeance. This, they gestured to the reconstruction. This is justice. Across what had once been Confederation space, a new political reality emerged. Not a human empire Asmani had feared, but a looser association of independent worlds. Humans offered technology protection and trade, but demanded one non-negotiable commitment: in return, the adoption of what became known as the Montana Accord, a set of principles that established absolute prohibitions against targeting the young of any species under any circumstances. The accord included a mutual defense provision that made any violation a crime, justifying total war by all signatories. You fundamentally altered the balance of power. In this galaxy, observed Cavan, now serving as a representative of his home world to the new association. No, corrected the human diplomat. We've introduced a concept your kinds never fully embraced. Consequences. Some lines can't be crossed without fundamental, irreversible repercussions. 10 standard years later, on the site where the orphanage once stood, a new structure was completed. Larger, better equipped, and surrounded by gardens maintained by former Confederation officials. Above its entrance, a plaque, in multiple languages, including the extinct bureaucratic script of the Confederation. Here we remember the children who died, and the civilization that died with them may both serve as reminders that the universe has lines that must never be crossed. Beneath it, in smaller text, humanity remembers its promises both to protect and to avenge. The galaxy learned its lesson. No one bombed another orphanage they wouldn't dare.